You're listening to Radio St Helier.
Radio St Helier.
Music to your ears.
Hello and welcome to Radio St Helier. Today we have a very special guest joining us. I'm delighted to welcome James Blythe, the Managing Director of the Epsom and St Helier Trust. You may not know this, but James plays a very crucial role in ensuring our hospitals run smoothly and efficiently, overseeing everything from patient care to general operations. We're going to get to know James a little bit better today, learn about his journey and discuss the challenges and successes he's encountered in leading one of the most important institutions in our community. So sit back, relax and get ready for an insightful conversation with the person who's at the helm of our local healthcare services. But before that, let's hear one of his favourite songs.
Sweet surrender on the quayside. You remember we used to run and hide. In the shadow of the cargoes, I take you one time. We're counting all the numbers down to the waterline. When near misses on the dog-leaf stairway. French kisses in the darkened doorway. Fog horn blowing out a wild and cold. The policeman, he shines the light on my shoulder. Up comes a coaster, fast and silent in the night. Over my shoulder, all you can see are the pile. No money in our jackets and our jeans are torn. Your hands are cold, but your lips are warm.
James, thank you so much for giving us your time today. Great song to get us started. Welcome to Radio St Helier.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you for coming and giving your time. I know you don't have a lot to spare, so we do appreciate it. James, you joined the Trust, was it in February 2022?
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So still quite new to the role, really, would you say?
Yes. I mean, 2.5 years in and learning the ropes as I go. Yes, absolutely.
Before taking on this role, what were you doing? Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you got to the Epsom and St Helier Trust?
Sure. Well, I'm a career NHS manager. I've been working in and with the NHS now for 20 years. I left university. I had a degree in history, and one of the great successes, I think, in the NHS in training people, as well as training doctors and nurses and therapists and everybody who supports patients clinically day to day, the NHS also has a really established management training scheme, which I was very lucky to get on as a new graduate. It involved 2 years of placements and a postgraduate qualification, and I've had a few years outside of the NHS, but working with the service still.
Yeah.
And apart from that, I've just been doing sort of a series of jobs, really. I've done everything from leading relatively small services in hospitals and primary care, through to working with the Department of Health on big policy developments over the course of that time. It's been a really exciting, really varied career. Immediately before this, I was part of the team that was looking at how we started to work more closely with St George's, because what we have what we call a hospital group, so we share many leadership functions now with St George's. And before that, I was responsible for what we called the clinical commissioning groups. So they're some of the organisations in the wider NHS that make some of the decisions about how things are funded and how the NHS is organised. So, the one thing with the NHS is you'll never get bored with an NHS career. There's always plenty of variety.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. If somebody had said to me that taking a degree in history would lead to being the managing director of a hospital trust, I think I would have struggled to understand that, but you've explained that really well, so thank you for that. What would you say has been the most challenging aspect of your role? Because I'm sure there's been some tough times along the way.
So I think the thing that's really different about running hospitals than any other part of the NHS, or probably many other fields of life, is the pace and the variety. I mean, coming into work on a day, you really have no idea what's going to be thrown at you on that particular day. So a really good example was the recent global IT outages across the whole world. And on that day, because of the particular architecture for IT that we use, we lost quite a bit of our patient systems. We lost the systems that we use to record patients coming into the hospital on, that record some of our test results, and also that we use for prescribing. Now, we have agreed ways of dealing with what we call downtime. So there's ways that we can go onto paper records, and we can do that for a period of time. But it requires an absolutely huge amount of coordination. It requires liaison with other agencies. We were talking about what we could and couldn't take on that day, how we could support other hospitals who are having similar challenges. And, walking into work that morning, I had absolutely no idea that was what we were dealing with on that day. And then when it did start to resolve, it resolved as quickly as it was a huge challenge. But you're balancing that with all the things that you need to do for the very long term. So, with progressing the scheme to get the new hospital, with how we're evolving a financial plan, with how we're looking to redevelop these sites in order to make them safer and more effective. So you've got those day-to-day, you've got no idea what's coming in, but then you've also got to keep on looking at how you're going to lead the organisation strategically. And it's just finding the balance between that and dealing sometimes with the pace at which things change in a hospital setting.
So following that terrible time when everything went, have you managed to get it all back?
Yes.
So
absolutely.
it's all back.
Absolutely.
Everybody's records are there.
Yes.
That might be something that's worrying people.
No, I mean, so that was a specific challenge with a piece of software that sits behind a lot of, not just in healthcare, but I think it affected the air traffic control, it affected the trains. And as soon as the company whose software had broken fixed it, things started to come back online. But obviously we need to manage how things come back online. Because, for example, if we've been using paper forms to do our drugs for a period of time, we need to know we can rely on the electronic system again, and then we need to get everything off the paper forms
onto the system
and back onto the system. So there were some late nights for some of our pharmacy staff and some of our junior doctors transcribing everything back onto the system. So it's just about how you manage. But no, I mean, that's the thing with some of these things that we have to deal with. Often, when you resolve them, you go back to where you were quite quickly. But in the moment when your priority is keeping people safe, there's quite a lot to deal with.
So clearly it's a very demanding role. So when you're not here dealing with all those challenges, what do you do to unwind? How do you spend your time to just get yourself ready to face another Monday morning?
Well, I mean, I've got a family, so I've got a wife, and I've got two sons who are 10 and 7, and I do find that the great thing about going home to them is they sort of force you to unwind. They, have their own demands on your time and on your attention, and it's very different to being at work. So we spend a lot of time together. We've recently had a family holiday, and that really does kind of get you into a different way of thinking. I also run quite a lot, so I like to run on trails, so I like to run in the countryside. So I quite frequently head out to some of the Surrey Hills and go for a run at the weekend, and I do quite long runs. So I recently ran an ultramarathon sponsored for the Epsom and St Helier Hospital's charity. So I ran from London to Brighton. That's the longest one I've done so far. But yes, I find that the running is a great way to unwind. It gets you into a different way of thinking. It allows you to process some of the things that have gone on the week, and gets you ready for the next week. So yeah, that's my main way of switching off at the moment.
That's great. And the Surrey Hills are a beautiful place to run or walk or whatever you want to do in Surrey Hills. They're beautiful, aren't they? Yeah, absolutely. Could you give us an overview of the hospital trust? What are the main objectives that the trust is focusing on to ensure that it provides the best possible care for our community?
So we talk about what we call our care strategy, so C-A-R-N-E. So C is about collaboration and partnerships. So we've recently started working more closely with St George's. Mm-hmm. We're also quite unique here at Epsom and St Helier, because as well as running the hospital services that I'm responsible for, we also run the community services for most of the population that we serve. So I have a colleague who is the managing director for those community services, and what's really good about that is that it means that we have ways of, for example, making sure that if you attend the emergency department, but you are being supported by community teams, the emergency department and the community services are used to working together and might be able to take you home with a different type of support. We've recently put a community ward into K Block on the St Helier site, so what we're calling the reablement unit.
Oh,
so
yes. Is it Richard Bright?
It used to be Richard Bright.
So it's not called Richard Bright anymore.
That's kind of gone up to, but what that enables us to do is have a community ward, but with the support of the acute sites. That's the first one. The second one is about affordable healthcare fit for the future. So that's really about making sure that we are as efficient as we can be, to make sure that we kind of live within the resources that we have from the government. That's important not just for efficiency for its own sake, but it means that we then have more resources for more patient care and to do more things. The third one is about right care and right place and right time. So making sure we're giving people the right treatment, but it's also about things like making sure that when people are ready to go home, that we're able to work with our local partners to get them out at the right time, because we know that actually staying in hospital for a lot longer than you need to isn't actually good. And the fourth one's about engaged and empowered staff. So we know that the way to make, when you're leading a hospital, you're not really there to tell people what to do. We've got 7,000 staff here, and all of them have a contribution to make in terms of how we develop great care at this organisation, how we move the organisation forwards, what needs to change, what do we need to build on. So actually, if you can really get your staff to be part of leading the organisation at every single level, we know that produces better outcomes for patients. And if people feel a part of the organisation, they feel listened to, they feel that they can make positive change in the areas they work, that really helps to develop the organisation. So those are our four. The CARE, the care, is how we describe our main objectives.
Sounds very positive. I didn't realise 7,000 people working here.
Yes.
That's without your volunteers?
That would probably... So I think it's about 6,500 and then the volunteers.
And then volunteers on top, making it 7,000. That's a lot of people, isn't it? I knew it was a big hospital, but...
Well, that's across Epsom and St Helier, of course. That's across the whole trust.
Really,
and it includes the community services as well. So there's a significant number working in community services.
Yeah. What would you say, apart from the technical issue that you've just discussed, are the biggest challenges currently facing the trust? And are you and your team... And how are you and your team addressing them?
So, I mean, we talk in the case for the new hospital that we are planning to build at Sutton.
Okay, I've got a question about that later on.
Yes, absolutely. No, we'll come on to that. We talk about 3 challenges. We talk
Yeah.
about finance, we talk about workforce, and we talk about estates. So, and really they're all linked, because the thing with Epsom and St Helier is it's a single trust, and we try and run as many services as possible, as a single organisation. But for many services, we are one 400-bed hospital at St Helier and one 220-bed hospital at Epsom. And doing things twice on that sort of scale is really difficult. I mean, 600 to 650 beds, so the two combined, that's about the size of a district general hospital in the NHS in most places. In fact, it's a good size for a district general hospital in the NHS. It's probably slightly larger than average, but that means that if you're running those services once on that scale, you only need one set of 24/7 rotas for everything. You only need one of all the infrastructure you need for an emergency department. You only need one set of intensive care, one set of maternity, one set of paediatrics. And we're currently trying to do all of those things twice. And it puts pressure on our budgets, because obviously you need things to be open 24/7 twice over, and that costs more money. And it puts pressure on our workforce as well. So it's really difficult to find the doctors, the specialist nurses, the therapists. We're spreading people more thinly than if we were running things only on one site, in terms of those 24/7 acute services that we want to bring together. And it also means, because we only have the capital budget, so the estate's budget every year, that a hospital of our size would have, that it's split across 2 hospitals. And we know, particularly at St Helier, the estate is really, really old, and actually finding ways of updating it and repairing it so it can provide those modern healthcare standards is really, really difficult. But we're trying to do that, and also keep an eye on the fact that, Epsom's getting quite old as well. Most of the estate at Epsom is between 50 and 80 years old now. So we talk about the finance and the workforce and the estates, but really they're all 3 parts of the same challenge, and being that split site trust, as we describe it, sits at the heart of a lot of our challenges.
It does sound an awful lot to deal with, actually. Maybe just one big site would be the answer.
Well, we have a scheme which we've had for a few years, and has been part of the government's new hospitals programme. And that scheme is called Building Your Future Hospitals, and its aim is to bring together the 6 major acute services that are open 24/7. So that's the major emergency department that mainly deals with people being brought in by ambulance. It's the acute medical beds. It's the emergency surgery beds, which are currently only at St Helier. It's the intensive care. So currently we've got an intensive care unit here. We've got a high dependency unit. So that's a slightly lower level of care at Epsom. It's the inpatient maternity. So it's people giving birth. And it's the inpatient paediatrics. So when children are admitted to hospital. And the idea is that we bring together those 6 24/7 services, because we know those are the ones where we desperately need new estate. We need to have that single consolidated workforce. We can provide better quality with that workforce being in one place, and they're also the drivers of some of our financial challenges. But the idea with the scheme is that more than 4/5 of patient contacts remain at St Helier and at Epsom. So all the outpatient work can stay here at St Helier. Many of the diagnostic tests. I mean, we've invested in the last year in a new nuclear medicine scanner, which is a type of CT scanner on this site. And that's because we know that we want to keep that here in the future. So we can continue to invest in this site, because we know that we want to keep a huge number of patient contacts here, including having an urgent treatment centre here. So that will deal with about 2/3 of people who currently come to the A&E will continue to be able to get care here. So that's really what we want to do. We're looking to bring together the services that really need to be in one place, but keep as much as local as possible to those 2 communities around St Helier and Epsom, because we believe that's the right thing to do. We believe that keeping as much care as close as possible to people is the right thing to do, whilst obviously balancing with that need for efficiency and to be honest, balancing with that need for investment in a new hospital, because anybody walking around St Helier at the moment sees some of the challenges that we have.
Yeah. I think you've just answered a lot of big questions for a lot of people, including myself, because obviously it's something that we're all thinking about when we read in the paper that there's a new hospital coming, and, you know, does that mean this hospital's being pulled down? But thank you, you've just clarified that beautifully for us. So in the 2.5 years you've been with the Trust, what would you say some of your the projects are that you feel are your best achievements?
So there's a number of things that we've done and that we've innovated. We're just about to complete the refurbishment of the second part of the intensive care unit here at St Helier. That's an absolutely huge project to create a modern environment with modern cubicles, with all the modern equipment that an ITU needs. The first stage was already done. This is the second stage, so that will mean we have a fully modern ITU here. As I said earlier, we've also opened a community ward for the first ever time in Sutton, which is now on the St Helier site, and we've been working really hard with our local partners to get that open and get that running. So that's a completely new facility for people here, and we've also opened the new nuclear medicine scanner, and also refurbished a lot of our really difficult ward environments. So we had a number of wards that were, you know, we were really struggling with the environment. So we've done some work on that. But I think another of the sort of big achievements for me, and it's been an achievement right the way across the organisation, and I don't take particular credit for this, is actually when we have sort of national surveys that talk to our staff about how it feels to work here, it's an improving picture. And I think that feels really important. So, you know, you always get, the survey asks about 70 questions, and there's always some ups and some downs, and you always want to work on the downs and be proud about the ups. But we've had more ups than downs the first time. And that feels really important to us because we know, and we see it through our recruitment. So we're holding on to people better. We're attracting more permanent staff. We're using less temporary staff. So that's that we know that's really, you know, a positive marker for the organisation. Temporary staff make a great contribution to every single NHS organisation, but we know we should be aiming to use more permanent staff wherever possible. And what's also something that's recently happened that I do feel very proud of as well is there are specific surveys that look at the experience of our black and minority ethnic staff, who are 44% of our workforce here at Epsom and St Helier, and they are beginning to report a positive difference in how they feel coming to work, and we begin to see it through some of the things that we measure in terms of the outcomes for them as staff compared to our white staff as well. And we know that if we can build a culture that's really inclusive, that's really supportive of everyone, from every single background and with every single characteristic, you know, that really supports a very positive atmosphere for providing really great care. So I'm really proud of that as well, because fundamentally the buildings, they're a bit secondary. You know, they're important, but actually there's no hospital without the staff.
That's right.
And if this is somewhere that you know, really talented, really capable people want to come in and work, then that's what's going to deliver really good care here.
A really good positive note to take us into our next piece of music. Tell us why you've chosen this. Well, tell us what it is first, because I have to say I've never heard this song until I've played it after you told me we were going to include it.
So this is a track by Jessie Buckley and Bernard Butler. So Bernard Butler was the guitarist in Suede right at the start of his career. He's then worked with a number of artists, and he's somebody whose music I've always really loved. It has a real sense of space and calmness, but the songs tend to be really profound as well. And he's worked with Jessie Buckley, who has an absolutely fantastic voice and is also a really talented actor. And this album, it was nominated for the Mercury Prize, and it's my driving home from work album at the moment. It just gives me that slight sense of calmness after a busy day. And this is the standout track from the album. It's called Footnotes on the Map.
She's staring out to sea, silence itself echoes out of the cold, he sounds vault. But here is the secret Nothing's lost, just found. Tide is broken now, and the whisper dissolves like a kind of a bird. Never gets any rest. Spends its whole life on its wings. Beats the wind instead. And the wind said fly, and the sea said live, and the sun says it can, it can, it will fly away. But the rain, we must listen to that. The rain knows all of these songs that our hearts have mapped. And your tongue is a river,
Your tongue is a river,
heading out to the shore,
heading out to the shore,
interrupted by a heartbeat,
by a heartbeat,
boulder in the flow.
a boulder in the
There's no fear without courage,
sea without courage.
sense of what's left behind or to come.
What's to come?
Just adrift in a moment,
Drifting a moment,
float in the storm.
float in the storm.
Wind said fly, and sea said live. The sun says it can, it will fly away. But the rain, we must listen to that.
We must listen to that.
Rain knows all of these songs that our hearts have mapped.
That our hearts have
Your tongue is a river, heading out to the shore, interrupted by a heartbeat, like a boulder in the flow. Your tongue is a river. You must listen to that. Interrupted by a heartbeat. Footnote on the map.
Great song. Thank you for choosing that one. Ensuring high quality care for patients is always a top priority. How does the Trust go about maintaining and improving patient care standards? I know you've already touched on this really, but perhaps you could expand a little bit.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So we have an awful lot of data about the care that we're providing. So we have dashboards for every single ward area that tell us about the outcomes from recent visits to those wards.
Can I stop you there for a minute? Because I'm just wondering how many people are sitting there thinking, what do you mean a dashboard? You know,
Sure.
They think dashboard, they think car.
Let me move away
Yeah.
from the management jargon.
Yeah.
So we have measures. We have documents that give us different standards and give us on a dashboard. You might have some sort of rating system, so something like a traffic light system, that will tell us about the care on that ward, about the standards, about the staffing, about the number of compliments and complaints. They will tell us about how frequently things are happening that we hope to prevent, so falls or pressure ulcers and things like that. So we're able to monitor that every single month for every single ward across the organisation. And then there are a variety of other measures as well that sort of come together in various reports. We have what we call a patient safety and quality group just for Epsom and St Helier that pull together those reports from all of the services across the organisation and then look at them and say, where are our challenges, where are our problems, who's doing well, who's struggling, and then help to put in place some plans around that. And they put that together with data on incidents. So all staff can record incidents, and then we have a system of grading incidents and making sure that we get learning out of them, so that if something does go wrong with patient care, or a patient does have a poor outcome, we can pull out the learning, we can have a look at it, we can investigate it where necessary, and we can apply that learning back into how we care. And all of that organisation then goes up to the trust board. So if you look at the board papers are on the website, the board meets in public, and there's what's called an integrated quality and performance report in there that looks at things like our waiting times in A&E. It looks at if you're admitted, how long does it take you to get into a bed, because one of our key problems at the moment is the flow through the hospital and making sure that people can get to bed when it's ready. It looks at how likely you are to get day surgery versus other hospitals, because we know that where we can, we should be doing procedures as day surgery, because that allows people to go home. It decreases the risks associated with staying in hospital. So all of those measures go into that report to the board, and the board sees that every single time that it meets. So it's a huge collective effort, because you're sort of pulling together information from right the way across the organisation from different services, and looking at it all and saying, well, where are the vast majority of things are okay most of the time, but you're looking for that signal that says there's something we need to have a look at, or that signal that says a service is doing really well, and how do we take something from that service and try and use it across the rest of the organisation. So it's a huge system. I have a chief nursing officer and a chief medical officer, and then they have a team that they work with that works between ourselves and St George's to pull all that information together and help make sure we can understand it.
Thank you. Can we talk a little bit about patient waiting times? I was out collecting requests recently, and I met a chap who said he had just spent 15 hours in A&E. But, the good news is he was then taken off to surgery, and he had the operation that he needed. But, patient waiting times are always a big concern. And I'm wondering if this reablement unit is going to help as well. One of our members at Radio St Helier was actually in that reablement ward recently, which is why I knew where it was. Yeah. And that must free up beds, I guess, because instead of sitting on a ward waiting to be mobile enough to go home or whatever the problem is, they can move off that ward and open up a bed for somebody else. So is that something you see helping in that way? Yeah,
absolutely. But if I deal with people coming in for emergency care first in terms of waiting times, there has been a challenge right the way across the NHS, including St Helier, since the pandemic, really, in terms of people waiting longer in A&E, particularly after they've had a decision to admit. And patients who come in and can go straight home generally get seen and treated within 4 hours and then go home. It's the patients who are waiting for a bed who wait the longest. There's a few things that we're doing. The first is just making sure that for every single patient who is waiting for a scan, a test, a result, an opinion from a senior doctor or a nurse or a therapist, just making sure that we do that as quickly as possible. So that's just making sure we know where every patient is in the hospital, what they're waiting for, making sure they're getting it as much as possible. But also we know that to support people to go home safely, more and more of our patients can't go home without any support. So people are requiring more and more support to go home. So that's about when we're liaising with social care, community services, equipment providers. Somebody might be going home to a nursing or a residential home, so they need to be assessed before they can go. And we're looking to try and speed all of those processes up. We're putting in place sort of senior review. If somebody's been in hospital for more than a month, we have a look at their case and say, what can we do to support them to go home? So it's about looking to speed up every single stage of the pathway, because we know that actually we need to get so much in place to support people to go home, and people's needs are more complex than ever. When we had a look at Epsom actually a couple of winters ago, across 200 beds, there were 2 patients in Epsom who were waiting for a new boiler, because it was the middle of winter,
right.
and they'd been at home for a really long time, and something that had contributed to them becoming unwell was the fact that the heating wasn't working.
Right.
So we could fix their medical challenge that had been associated with that, but to discharge them safely, but actually something that some systems have started to work on, and some of the local authorities have worked on, is having funds that are available to fix those sorts of things in people's homes so that they can get home quicker. So all of that needs to be addressed, because if we can't get people out, then they're in beds, and that takes up the bed space, and then there's not the space to bring people in who then need the care in the emergency department. But also we are looking at how we can get people up earlier in the day. So can we start to move people on towards where we know that people will be discharged later in the day? Because the patient who's being discharged, we have things called discharge lounges that they can go to. So we move a patient to a discharge lounge, or even out into another area in the ward, just so that new patient who is more unwell can get access to that bed sooner, because we know that's the right thing for that patient. On the on the planned side, so if you have a planned operation, we're seeing about 12% more patients than we were before the pandemic now. So we've really increased the amount of work that we're doing, and one of the ways that we've done that is increase the amount of time our theatres are in use during the day. So we've moved up to about 85% what we call theatre utilisation. So that's the amount of time in theatre that is actually sort of knife to skin, and that just means that we get more cases in, and that means that people get treated more quickly. We're also, instead of bringing everyone in for an outpatient appointment, we're trying to do more where we offer advice and guidance to the GPs, that we say to people, rather than you need a follow-up, rather than book a follow-up for 6 months, if you feel you want to be followed up, you need to be followed up. If there's a flare-up in your condition, you call us and we'll get you in. And that means that we don't have to just keep seeing people every 6 months just in case there's something wrong. So it's about really changing what we do and becoming more efficient, because there's absolutely huge demand after the pandemic, and we're still catching up with it.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, doesn't it? Rather than just keep coming back for a 6-monthly appointment if you don't need it. That does make a lot of sense. Are you utilising the telephone for appointments and FaceTime, or not FaceTime, some sort of video calling? Are you still using that like happened in COVID? Yes,
we are a little bit. But what we've learned is it only works for specific things. And we're not using it anywhere where the evidence has shown us that if you do it, it's more likely than not you're still going to need to see somebody face to face, because then we're basically replicating that time. So it is something we absolutely do, but we're just probably a little bit more careful, whereas in COVID sometimes it was the only option, whereas now we're a bit more careful about how we use it.
And I guess the alternative that you've been talking about, instead of saying come back and see us in 6 months, but actually you can come back if you need to, actually negates the need for that telephone call anyway, doesn't it, really?
Absolutely. As long as patients are really clear about it and know how they can contact us and feel confident doing that. It doesn't work with all patient groups all the time, but it's something we actually call it patient-initiated follow-up, because... or PIFU. We love a good acronym. Love a good acronym in the NHS. So, but it's been shown to work. So it's been shown to work really well with some groups of patients.
You're saying some groups of patients. Are there some that don't like to contact you because they think, I'm not sure if I do need this appointment? Exactly.
And if that was ever a concern, we wouldn't put in place that mechanism.
Yeah.
But we do have groups of patients who are really engaged in their own care. So, for example, if you have some gastroenterology conditions such as inflammatory bowel disease, you are the best person to manage your care. When you're having a flare-up. So actually the ability to not just wait 3 or 6 months for a follow-up appointment, be able to say, I'm having a flare-up, I need to be seen, be able to phone the service and get yourself in, works a lot better for those groups of patients.
Makes a lot of sense. It sort of begs the question, why hasn't it been thought of before, doesn't it, really?
Well, we were working on some of these things before the pandemic, but I think major crises, we know that pandemics and wars create innovation. And nothing ever goes quite back to the way that it was. And the NHS learned enormously during the pandemic. And I think it's really important that we hold on to the good things and don't just try and turn the clock back.
Yeah, talking of the pandemic, I'm sure a lot of your staff actually suffered greatly emotionally and physically as well, with the additional stress and strain that was put on them. How do you look after the well-being of your staff? And are you actually, well, you've actually mentioned that you're retaining staff better. So why do you think that is, and what are you doing to look after the well-being of your staff?
So we have employee assistants and we have counselling services specifically for staff, and they can work with individual staff, but they can also work with whole teams as well where they need to. So sometimes that pressure comes out in terms of a team finding it more difficult to work together than they did before, in which case we have specialist services that can work with those individual teams, and any manager or any member of staff can refer themselves into those services through occupational health. I think it's also about creating the culture, the working environment that people feel supported in. So we have a so many organisations have a set of corporate values. We have one value here at Epsom St Helier.
Just one,
and it's respect.
Because it's a good one to have if you're only going to have one.
Exactly, and it was instituted by the management team that were here before me, and I've been really keen to hold on to it, because what respect does is, if we treat everyone with respect, both patients and our fellow staff, we create an environment in which people feel comfortable and safe. They feel able to speak out. So we know that one of the key things that supports staff is if they feel able to speak out about areas that they can see things aren't working as well as they might be, or things they're finding challenging at work, they will feel that it's a supportive environment. And that's something that we work really hard on. And that's one of the things that's come through in the staff survey. It doesn't work anywhere perfectly all the time. And the reality is, an NHS hospital can be a very, very stressful working environment.
I'm sure.
But if we can try and create the conditions whereby people do feel comfortable in that way, and we also have something called a Freedom to Speak Up service. So this is a anonymous and completely confidential service that anybody, any member of our staff can go and talk to about something that they feel is a concern on any basis, and then we have our Freedom to Speak Up guardians will then work with the local management of that service to attempt to resolve that concern and help a member of staff with that. So I think it's more than anything. We can all talk about, we have various discount schemes and we're partnered with various providers and we have various benefits available to staff. But actually what staff consistently tell me is it's about how they feel about coming to work. That's what makes the difference to them. So that's the thing that I've been really keen to work on since I've been here.
And you're retaining staff, so it seems to be working, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always important not to get complacent, and there's always more we can do. But I think if you focus on it and you consistently talk about it, then it will make a difference.
With the increasing healthcare costs, managing the budget must be a constant challenge. And you've talked in quite a lot of detail, really, about how you're looking to save money by improving efficiencies, by combining some of the services. Do you have any additional funding promised from the government? Is there any funding coming forward to the National Health?
So we've had some specific money over the last couple of years. So the opening of that reablement unit was funded by extra money from the government, and we've been able to open some further beds at Epsom with some extra money from the government as well, which has been really, really positive. But it is still a huge challenge. We do get paid more for the more planned, so waiting list work that we do. So that's always something, obviously, we're incentivised to try and get through the waiting list because we do get the money back for doing that. But we do also have to try and manage our costs. So there's a lot of inflation out there at the moment. The cost of supplies is going up. The cost of drugs is going up. The cost of transport and fuel is going up as well. So that puts big pressure on our budgets. And we are always happy to spend money when we know it's the right thing. We have really tightened up what we spend money on. We do spend a lot less money on temporary staffing than we did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, you said, so that's good.
Not just on the numbers, but also on where we get it from. We try and get it from our internal bank more. Again, external agencies have a really important role to play in the NHS, but but they are more expensive. So if we use them more, then there's less money available for other things. So it's just tightening up on everything like that, and being able to demonstrate to our board and to the wider NHS that we are doing everything we can to spend every pound wisely in the organisation. And at the end of the day, that's all we can do.
Did you find that staff levels dropped dramatically after COVID?
No.
No,
We didn't. I mean, we had more what we call turnover, so we had more people leaving and joining for a little while. I think COVID was a cause for a lot of people to reevaluate the choices that they'd made around their own career and maybe try something different for a little while. But in overall terms, our staff numbers went up to deal with COVID, and they've come down a little bit, but they haven't come down hugely subsequently. So we still have a lot more staff in the organisation than we had before COVID.
That's really good, because I think there's a misconception, I think people think that staff levels went up during COVID, people got burnt out and then all just fell away, and that there's massive shortages within the NHS now. I think that's what is currently believed at the moment.
I wouldn't say it's that. I think the demands are huge. So the size of the waiting lists, and also the number of people that we have coming in to the hospital with really complex physical needs, but also really complex mental health needs. So that has massively gone up since I've joined the organisation. We have quite a few patients coming into the emergency department who do have quite complex mental health needs, and we're working really closely with local mental health providers so that if there's no physical health need for them at the hospital, but they may need, for example, a mental health bed or increased support in the community, that can be arranged as quickly as possible. So I don't think it's the resources have gone down, but the pressures on them have definitely gone up.
So the demand's gone up.
Yeah, the demand's definitely gone up.
Yeah. You're talking about all this collaboration. Is that what they're calling integrated care?
It is.
It is, isn't
it? It is. I don't like that term. I'd rather talk in
partnership,
very practical terms about who we're working with and what we're doing with them.
Exactly.
But when you add it all together, that's integrated
care.
That
is what they're talking about, yes. So I thought that's what it was. It's just one of these words that gets thrown out there, isn't it? And it seems to be the word of the day, integrated care. What it just means working in partnership, really, doesn't it? And working together. Can we look to the future a little bit? You've already talked about how the hospital is, and that was one of my big finishing questions for you, really, because I know it's a big question for everybody. But just thinking strategically, what are the goals strategically for the trust?
So definitely get our new hospital.
Yeah.
I mean,
is there a date that you're looking to?
Well, one of the difficulties that we have is that the new Chancellor announced a review of the National New Hospitals Programme very early on after being elected. So we're just waiting to hear about that.
Okay.
So that's not just a review of our scheme, that's a review of every new hospital scheme across the country. So we'll need to see what the output of that is. But we know in terms of a number of years beyond when we get to a certain point, roughly how long we think it will take. So.
And where will it be?
Or
is that the big question?
No, we know exactly where it will be.
Where will it be?
It will be on the Sutton Hospital site.
Okay.
So it will work really closely with the Royal Marsden. The plan is that us and the Royal Marsden share some facilities. They want to put some services into our new hospital, create a link bridge between the two, and it will work really closely with the Institute of Cancer Research that's on that site, and also a development that's going on in Sutton at the moment called the London Cancer Hub. So this is where we're developing some new, or the council with a couple of partners are developing some new infrastructure on that site. So the idea is that by putting it on a campus, if you like, we can have some shared facilities. It can have a bit of a sense of place around it rather than just sort of being a hospital plonked on a site. So that's the plan for that.
So where will it sit on the? Will the existing building come down?
So most of the Sutton Hospital buildings have been demolished already.
Okay.
Most of the new hospital sits on the footprint where the car park is at the moment. So that goes there, and then we're looking at where us and the Marsden can put some parking around to support the site.
Right.
So that's really important to us. But we know that new hospitals in the NHS take a really long time to get planning for and built. So we just know that from the last couple that have opened.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, we need to continue to develop and refurbish both Epsom and St Helier. And most importantly, I think we need to develop our collaboration with St George's. So, I sit on a shared leadership team with the leadership of St George's. We know that a lot of patients start their journey here and then go up to St George's as our larger local specialist centre. So we're looking at how, for certain patient pathways, you can get better access to specialist care. Can you get more locally, or do we need to work together with a shared team that works across Epsom and St Helier and St George's? So we're really developing those shared clinical services as well, because we know that working with a great teaching hospital that's just up the road from us, a few miles up the road from us, we can do more. So I think that's also strategically a really important development for Epsom and St Helier, and helps to safeguard local services, because you can be part of that. You can be part of that wider organisation, but you can still keep the important stuff local as well.
Great. And any other key objectives, strategies that you're working on?
I think that's enough, don't you?
I do, actually.
It's a bit to be getting on with, Sylvia. I mean, I'm happy to take any suggestions, but
No, I just wondered if there was anything else in the plan. But it does sound like they're going to keep you very busy for the next few years.
I can say with confidence I am never bored at work, and that is one of the things I love about the job.
Yeah, that's great. Would you like to give a message to our listeners, your patients?
What is my message for our patients? So firstly, my message is I hope you feel well supported in the hospital.
Can I jump in there?
Yes.
What do they do if they don't?
So talk to some of the staff. Talk to the staff around them. If they're on a ward, then talk to the ward sister or talk to the matron. If they don't feel comfortable with that, then either themselves or somebody who's supporting them can get in contact with our patient advice and liaison service. Please do speak up, because we would rather resolve issues early and here and now, and we do put a huge emphasis on patient feedback. I talked earlier about one of the things we look at for the wards is the themes from the complaints and the number of complaints. So we do take it really seriously. I sign off, either myself or a senior nurse or senior doctor signs off every single complaint response that leaves this organisation, because we know how important it is. But we'd rather people didn't get to a formal complaint. We'd rather they spoke up early, that we've got an opportunity to address issues. But irrespective, we really hope that you're getting the care that you feel you need here. We really hope you're having a positive experience. What I would ask of everyone is please be kind and supportive to the staff who are looking after you. They are there, and I'm immensely proud to work in this organisation, because I see the compassion and the skill and the care that goes in every single day. In the vast majority of cases, our staff, their experience of caring for patients is very positive, but there has been a rise in the really small number of cases where that's not the case, and sometimes because there are pressure on our services, but also I think it's just sometimes a bit of a changing nature of society. Our staff are subject to some aggression and sadly sometimes some physical violence from patients, and it's something that we've worked really hard to come down on quite hard, to really challenge patients and families where that happens, and there have been occasions where we've actually barred people from the hospital except for sort of life-saving emergencies because our staff have had a repeated experience of being subject to violence and aggression. So that respect value cuts both ways. It's something that we really encourage with our staff, but I think and in the vast majority of cases it's exactly what we do see from our patients and service users. But it is so important to our staff, and I don't feel I could end without just mentioning it, so that that they know also that we're aware of it, and that we're on their side when those situations come up.
It's a great note to end on. Thank you very much. I do have to say, I spend quite a lot of time going around the wards collecting requests, and the feedback I get from patients is always very positive. They're always asking me to play music for the nurses, music for the doctors, music for the cleaners. The only people they don't ask me to play music for is the chef. I do still pick up a few complaints about the food. Have you got an external agency doing the cooking
No,
here?
we
Is it
brought
all
it back
in-house?
in-house.
Is it back in-house?
We brought it back in-house a few years ago. I would say that generally, from what we see, I think the feedback on it's got better. I think it's really difficult to cater for a wide range of tastes.
I agree, because I must admit, I go round on the wards around lunchtime and the food always looks pretty good to me.
So, but again, if you're not getting what you need, then just say, and we'll try and do something about it.
James, thank you very, very much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I hope that it's been okay for you.
It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Good. It's clear that under your leadership, you're taking us where we need this hospital to go. So thank you very much for all the hard work you're doing. Please stay motivated to keep coming back on a Monday morning, won't you? And I can't finish without thanking our listeners for tuning in today and listening to this interview that we've had. Well, it's not really an interview, is it? It's a chat.
A bit of a chat.
A bit of a chat. So thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you found the conversation helpful and interesting. Get well soon, wherever you are. Bye for now.